Hey, everybody, friends and neighbors. And, you know, I'd break into a Fred Rogers song, but you guys know it and you don't want to hear me sing it. So anyway, welcome to another round of PPP tax fun and frivolity and whatever else you guys want to talk about. Everybody is ramping on here. You know the drill. Q&A button for questions, chat for the harassment. And while you guys are getting on, this is kind of breaking news as of yesterday. But if you think that you can hide from the long arm of the law, if you lied on your PPP, it has come to Charlotte, North Carolina. And the retail stores at the South Park Mall benefited to the tune of about 150,000 with the high end, you know, Louis Vuitton and Neiman Marcus and all that. But if you closed down your business in 2019 and you applied for a $150,000 PPP loan, they are looking for you. So we have tried to be very careful about telling people, don't do anything, even pushing the line. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I feel bad that somebody would go to that point and do it, but the long arm of the law is going to find you. So, oh, we do have some questions that have already come in. Awesome. We will get to those. We got one yesterday as well from Sunil. We'll get into that. Adam, you want to do the preamble first, and then we'll pass it over to Jack?
Yeah, you know, a couple things. You know, for starters, yeah, like we said before, they're coming after people who flat out committed fraud. You know, not people that thought, oh, geez, I don't know if I really needed the money or not. So the couple things that came out of this last week. So North Carolina was nice enough to send out a notice saying, great news for you business owners. We're not going to make the income associated with PPP taxable. And then the next sentence said, however, you cannot deduct the expenses that are deductible on your federal return. So, you know, it's still nothing being done yet about taxation of PPP related expenses in North Carolina at this point. So, you know, the penalty is pretty stiff in North Carolina in terms of the interest if you don't pay the taxes. So, you know, it's ultimately your choice whether you want to extend your return and not pay it, wait and see what happens or not from that standpoint. And it is ridiculous, and hopefully they do something here relatively soon. I think the second thing, you know, is people are really in the thick of processing applications that they haven't already. You know, we did have some people that were larger employers that just had a question around the reporting, where you're supposed to, you know, report belly buttons at application, belly buttons at forgiveness, and the things really aren't related to anything related to the forgiving amount. It's just informational, because at the end of the day, all that really matters is the FTE count during your various test periods you can use to compare against your covered period. So, yeah, in one specific case that we had, you know, belly buttons were actually less between the two reference periods, but the FTE count was more because the lower belly button count was working more hours. Therefore, they counted as more FTEs, which is what the forgiveness rules actually say. So, you know, just don't get too hung up on stuff like that. And then lastly, on the stimulus package, my take on it really is that there's not much here for businesses. You know, specifically the PPP recharge that they've got is pretty limited. I've got it here. Yeah, the PPP recharge is pretty limited, $7.25 billion more. So it's not a lot. You know, what is nice, they're going to recharge the EDL program to the tune of 15 billion if it gets through. So there'll be some money there. And then actually this one's pretty good. They've got a restaurant revitalization fund that they're asking for that's 25 billion. So, you know, that'd be specific to restaurants, which is, you know, helpful. However, it's going to be targeted to small restaurants, you know, $500,000 and below. So it's not going to for a lot of our restaurant clients, they were bigger than that. So who knows how that one will shake out. The rest of the stuff that's in this, really, it's in the form of individual aid, whether it's more rebates, more recovery checks, tax credits for having kids. See, I told you they were worth some money, Jack. So keep having them. No, just kidding. I think the one thing I'm kind of unclear on is, I don't think that they're going to pay for the increased the federal minimum wage thing. I mean, if that actually makes it all the way through, I can't see that it will make it all the way through. But how they would, I understand it's in legislation, but in theory, that has no economic consequence to the federal budget. That's an economic consequence for all of us. So, kind of curious to see how that one plays out. But there's not really much in here for businesses in the traditional sense that we've been talking about here. It really is targeted more at the individual level.
My turn?
Jack,
Go, Jack.
up.
Okay. So a couple of updates. So there has been a little bit of activity in relation to smaller businesses. So I'll give you kind of the reasoning that the Utes in the White House and the SBA have given to us, right? So here we go. Criticism: because of the program's $659 billion first round last year benefited larger, more affluent and connected businesses at the expense of disadvantaged businesses for which it was designed. So Monday, 5 changes for the next 2 weeks, essentially. So starting yesterday, only businesses with fewer than 20 employees can apply for loans for a 2-week period. Interesting question. Have a client who was already in the process and it bounced back needing clarification, which has been provided, but don't know if now that application is like frozen in time until the end of this 2-week period. So I don't know the answer to that. But so 5 changes. First one is, and actually only 2 of them, hopefully only 2 of them, because the third one I hope is not applicable to any of you. So first one, as I said, 20 employees or less for the 2-week period. The way the loans are calculated has been changed so that businesses without employees get more relief, and specifically that it's they compared it to how they calculate the formula for farmers, which is calculating using net profits instead of gross income, because it allegedly failed to capture the full cost sole proprietors and independent contractors faced. So there's that. And they've set aside, I think it's $1.0 billion, $1 billion for this specific purpose for loans in the next 2 weeks. The third one that I hope none of you really have to deal with is the elimination of an exclusion that prevents business owners with non-fraud felony convictions from accessing the program. So those of you who have committed fraud or committed felonies but are not related to fraud, you're good to go now. And then they had
Gary,
absolutely.
did you hear that? We can get in there.
I know some people.
Mhm.
Fortunately,
Everybody,
not me, but I know.
I think
some
everybody
people.
knows some people that might apply to. Hopefully, none of the tens of people that are on this call now. And then they had other exceptions with dealing with people who owe money on federal student loans, non-citizens, et cetera. So that's what's going on with that. And again, the purpose of that was to provide accessibility, because another statistic is that 98% of businesses have less than 20 employees. So you can see, we've talked over the course of time in the past about the disproportionality of accessibility to the funds, accessibility to bankers, and just the fact that it's just so clogged that they're basically pushing the pause button and saying, okay, this subset of businesses are now getting the merge. They're allowed to go into the process and everyone else is on hold for now. So that is in essence what the hubbub has been over the past several days since the last time we talked about what's going on.
Yeah. And I'll, in unrelated stimulus stuff that's still moving through the process. I think, Gary, you had sent out an article. This is just for people to be aware of that are also on the call, since you're looking at a broad spectrum of stuff. Other things that are happening, North Carolina seems to be gleefully increasing unemployment rates, which isn't great. That we would not have thought that the unemployment rate moratorium would have shown up as a classic North Carolina move. Hey, we're totally going to give you relief. Not really. Meaning like, we're just going to delay putting the hammer down on you. That was one. The second one is, if you guys have been following the news around gig workers, Gary forwarded out an article to Jack and I, but the UK, I believe, recently passed a law that said that gig workers, and specifically it was Uber drivers, were now employees, not independent contractors. And I think France had already taken that position. That, in the UK, kind of, I can't say if it makes sense or doesn't make sense, but having lived there, there was a real big difference when I lived there between actually getting a black cab and getting a ride share, because the black cab, you have to go through like a year to pass this test called the knowledge. That is literally, you got to be able to navigate your way around from memory. So those guys were good, but they were more expensive, versus, to quote Tim Gamble, the jabronis that were driving around in the equivalent of rideshare programs. So I guess I kind of see it a little bit. It's just more of a, hey, to everybody on the call, just be on the notice that probably some changes will be coming to, some stuff that got put on hold that were focus areas for the Obama administration, that's specifically around independent contractor classifications and overtime rules. So just that in a minute, and kind of the equivalent of a minimum wage for a salaried employee. So just, be on the lookout. Other stuff may be coming down the pike, or might otherwise get buried. Some of the stuff that we see coming out.
And just as a footnote to that, just because you have a document that says, hey, independent contractor agreement, doesn't make you magically an independent contractor if you don't meet the tests. So I get that a lot. It's like, but my agreement says I am, or, hey, I drafted this agreement, and so I'm going to treat this person as an independent contractor. So yes.
That's good. You guys ready to roll? We got a number of questions that are mounting up here. I'm going to start with one that came in yesterday, actually. So Sunil says, would like to know if I've applied for first and second round of PPP loans, got the first and the second's in process, can I apply for a third installment? I think they're thinking that this is open for 2 weeks starting today. This is what we were talking about, the under 20. And where can I get the application, et cetera. But
yes, so it's not actually a third loan. It's a prioritization of application processes. So if you already got one and you got two, your only recourse to get more funding is if you got shortchanged in those funding rounds. But if you otherwise were fully funded, you got what you're going to get.
Yeah, and shortchanged also meaning if you didn't apply for the full amount, or if you gave some back potentially. So it's all of those things together.
Yeah, and I think this question specifically came from a restaurant owner, and we have had cases early in the fog of battle where people did not include tips in their application process, but they should have been. So that's a case where you could go back and get more money from round one, and you definitely should be considering tips in round two, because it's part of your 940. It's part of the calculation. It should not be excluded.
all right, next question is from Vanessa. What is the status of the employee retention credit? Any updates?
The status is the status. No, it's still there. So we have had a few clients that have applied for the credit. I don't think we've had any clients that have tried to amend any returns for 2020 yet, but we have had some that have gone ahead and made the safe harbor election based on the quarter four 2019. Quarter four 2020 relative to quarter four 2019. And it's, basically what ends up happening is, you get, if you're waiting, then what'll end up happening is that your payroll company will just, not take as much money from you. They'll only take the net check. There's also an expedited refund process you can go through, but my own feeling is, if you put the word expedited in front of the word government, I'm just suspicious of when that's going to show up. So unless you're totally on life support from a cash flow perspective, what I would do is I would go ahead and be applying for, let your payroll company know that the credit should apply. You'll start keeping your money. And if it ends up meaning that you got more credit than you got federal withholding taxes and Social Security taxes, you'll just have a credit carry forward for a future year.
All right, great.
Or a future payroll period.
Next question is from someone that's anonymous. It says, can I apply for PPP loan forgiveness using the easy form if my FTE reductions for retirements and firing for cause only 5 out of 145 positions in the company? I did not replace the employees because business is down. We met all the other easy form requirements, but it's not clear if this type of FTE reduction allows us to check the first box on the checklist using the easy form, page 5 of the easy form. Thanks.
I'll stall while maybe Jack tries to look up the answer for the question, but my initial indication would be, first, if you go back to the first example that I gave, it could be that your belly button's down, but you're not down from an FTE perspective. If you do the calculation multiple ways, for example, if you got a part-time person, and they're 0.2 by calculation, are you using the safe harbor method to round them up to 0.5? So, before calling it a day on the easy form, just make sure that you're using FTE and you're using everything to your advantage in terms of your test periods that you have available for you. Independent of that, if the answer is still we're down from an FTE perspective, I don't think you can use the easy form. I think you got to fill out the full-blown form and just say, hey, the exception, I do have an exception though that applies relative to the reduction. But Jack, do you know?
I agree, only because I'm looking at the form. Thank you for stalling while I pulled it up from the SBA website. And I just wanted to read the language on there to make sure, because, is there something that says
you should fill out that form very, 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 very carefully.
Yes. Yes. So, in looking at what it says, I mean, it says that did not reduce and ignore reductions that arose for inability to rehire, unable to hire similarly qualified employees for unfilled positions, and ignore where you've offered to restore and the employee has refused. So I think that with respect to retirements and firing for cause, the point is that if you fired someone for cause, that you're putting someone else back into that spot to maintain your level. So yeah, if the question being, can I use the easy form? I don't think you can under those circumstances, but yeah, I would discuss it with your banker, who may say yes or no. But I think that if I would rather that you take a more conservative approach on the fact that we cannot say here that, yeah, you can use it based on what the language says, or I haven't seen any interpretation or splitting of the hairs that would say that, yeah, that under those circumstances, it's okay. So that's a long-winded answer, which basically means that we think collectively that you should be using the easy form.
All right. Yeah. You guys get paid by the word, right?
Very, 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 very much so.
Okay, next question. Heard there will be a different or simplified process for PPP2 for single owner LLCs, 1099 independent contractors. Any insights on changes compared to PPP1?
I mean, other than they're part of this prioritization round, there's not any that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any either. And there may be just some confusion as to, what has happened over the past couple of days. So, maybe rewind the tape to see, because I think maybe that question came before I actually said what I said about the 5 changes, and hopefully none of you are felons. And if you are, it's not fraud, then you're okay.
All right.
Convicted?
Yeah. There's a difference between indicted and convicted. So
That's right.
This is from Julie. Where do you find the NAICS code? Is it, if so, is this?
Yeah. So this is an issue that we've had for a few clients. So it's on the top left portion of your federal income tax return. Meaning, and I can't remember if it appears on a payroll tax return or not. It may not. I just can't remember that off the top of my head, but it appears in the top left corner. So the challenge that we've had is that, we have it. This is where, you can do one of two things. So the example that we had is, well, actually we had 2 examples. Example number 1 is a local brewery that when they started, had a pretty small tap house and then did a lot of manufacturing and distribution. So we categorized them as a manufacturer and a distributor. But in 2019 and 2020, they kind of flipped to where their on-premise sales became the majority of their sales. And we never changed the NICS code because nobody ever really used it for anything. But the restaurant operations were pretty significant in 2019 and especially in 2020. So the way the NICS rules read is that your NICS code, if you have a dual business, is supposed to follow whatever is the majority of your revenues. And, if that changes, you typically would change it on the tax return and then it would get updated wherever it's going to get updated from there. So in this case, we didn't amend the return in that case, but we had to put an explanation around to the bank to say, look, I mean, these guys really should qualify as a restaurant, not as a manufacturer, and they should get the 3.5 number, not the 2.5 times number. That was one case. There was another case that was a group of RV parks that started as a different business that we never changed the NICS code on. That we just amended the tax return to have it reflect correctly. So just if that was the nature of the question, it could be that your code is wrong if you're trying to qualify as a restaurant.
It looks like she came back and gave some additional information, Julie. The code that she's got here is 711320, which is promoters of performing arts, sports, and similar events without facilities, art festivals, or art festival organizers without facilities. So
yeah, I think in that specific case, we've had a few questions around it. I actually don't know the answer off the top of my head, so I'm going to ask Jack to very, 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 very pretty please, if you can find an answer in the next 5 seconds, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll have to get back to you. But I think in this case, the venue operators, it was a specific target to people who actually owned the real estate and were the actual operators, not necessarily like a concert promoter or someone that did something peripherally related to music or entertainment or whatever. At least that's what I believe from the analysis that I've seen so far, is that it wasn't targeted towards add-on businesses or support businesses. No different than a food service provider doesn't qualify as a restaurant, even though they supply the restaurant business.
Yeah, I think that's right. The one exception, or the one that's in the gray area, is a company that manages the venues and not necessarily owns them or has a partial stake in it. Thinking like uh, who runs, or like not Ticketmaster, but the entity. So if the bank a bank owns or sponsors, whoever owns the land. So there's question as to what is the extent of any non-ownership, but it certainly doesn't apply to, for example, maybe a bunch of vendors that put some food trucks somewhere and hire a band to come play, or even maybe like on Friday and Saturday nights, like at Blakeney. I don't know who is the proprietor of that, but I don't think that would qualify either. I may be mistaken, but that is not the purpose of the exception or the increase in the number for that
It
particular
looks like
purpose.
this was Festival in the Park. Came back and qualified.
Yeah. So I think a supplier to Festival in the Park, I think that's going to be pretty tough. I think as the not-for-profit itself, Festival in the Park will qualify. I'm trying to remember, you guys are a client of the firm, but I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if you guys had any full-time employees or if it was all outsourced and we're paying vendors. But I would have thought the vendor would have qualified under whatever was applicable to PPP broadly, not specifically for revenue replacement associated with not having a venue able to open.
All right, cool. Hopefully that helps, Julie. Next question is, I've been advised by our bank that we need to apply for forgiveness before April 1st, or we'll have to start making payments based off of the full loan amount. Is that true? We received the loan in April of 2020 and used the 24-week option.
No, they're wrong. It's 10 months after the end of your cover period. We've had that question before from other banks. I don't know what they've been smoking, but they're not right.
Yeah, I mean, I think isn't the formula essentially 8 or 24 plus 10 months? I mean,
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think by our math, that the only people who would have possibly qualified would have been, I got the money right out of the gate and I used the 8-week period. In that case, you probably are coming up in kind of the March or April timeframe.
Okay, next one. Hey, Robert, good to see you here. Where can I find the new formula for independent contractors? Oh.
I thought this might come up, and I have not seen that it's necessarily a new formula, but I haven't looked to see. I mean, it is a new compilation essentially, but it's using the same documentation. If there's a new form, and maybe as we continue to go through in the next few minutes or so, I can take a look and see if the SBA has published a new form on their official website or not specifically for that. But I think it's like it is. It's the same form, so I don't think there's been a different form change. So, but I'll look.
Yeah. So, according to an article I read last night, that formula has not been established yet, and so their recommendation was hold off a little bit longer until they release it. But that was as of last night. So. Hey, the window's open for 2 weeks, but we won't know what the formula is.
Yeah, I think that if you, the recommendation I'm remembering as I'm sort of reading, but remembering something else that was said is that start with the EZ form and start filling that out and getting your documentation ready in order to be able to push it through at the appropriate time. But yeah, I'm not aware of anything that has come out in particular with respect to that, but I would start out with the EZ form because most likely that's the form that they're going to say to use, at least for your calculations.
Yeah, based on a CNBC article that I saw last night, it says the updated formula will use gross income as a stand-in for payroll costs larger than net income, but the formula hasn't been released yet. So,
Yeah, and that's in line with what I said before, which is the changes that instead of looking at net income, they're looking at gross income. And it actually, yeah, I think I said this before, because it fails that using net profits fails to capture the full cost sole proprietors and independent contractors faced. The new formula is intended to help both groups get more substantial loans. And then it goes into other stuff. And the reasons for it. So yeah, I mean, that is the general formula, but I have not seen published that this is the form to use, or this is how you get to the endpoint that you then submit into your banker.
yep. Next question, what is the risk of having the ERTC running out of money? I'm waiting for more direction from the IRS before applying, but I'd like to assess my risk by waiting. They just keep printing money, so they're never
Yeah.
gonna run out of money.
I mean, when it comes to a refundable tax credit, you know, typically, although they stick an earmark and an allocated budgetary amount in there, that's based on a presumption that that's just how many people will take advantage of it based on what they know at the time. But when it comes, it's not like that runs out. You know, it's because it's no different than like the stimulus check. It's not like they're like, well, you know, we're going to randomly pick names in the phone book and issue stimulus checks until we run out of the, 100 we're going to issue. So hopefully if anybody saw The Jerk, that actually happened in the movie The Jerk.
A long time ago.
Yeah, but they weren't he wasn't issuing stimulus checks. So I haven't seen the movie in a while, but all I need is so anyway, so I wouldn't be too concerned on this one. I mean, it's got a definitive end date, and whatever, it needs to be, that it's just a reduction in revenue for the government. So there's no specific, like, had to allocate money. They're just reducing incoming revenue.
All right, this is from Susan. Since the $10,000 EIDL received is not to be included in the loan forgiveness, how do we report this on 2020 taxes? Are there any other filing requirements concerning this grant money? Good question.
No, I mean, the only place that you'd have a issue would be, this is off the top of my head, but considering they combine it with the PPP loan forgiveness, it's an add back to North Carolina income as a specific box in the individual tax return.
All right, next question is, how do you calculate the benefits from the ERTC if we sponsor the majority of the premiums?
Can you ask that one more time?
How do you calculate benefits for the ERTC if we sponsor the majority of the premiums?
I mean, that actually is the benefit, because it's the part that you pay for, because the part the employee pays for is already inclusive in their salary.
Hopefully that helps. I've seen the SBA ask a $2 million plus borrower for the optional information on the form. That is the info that is to be held for 6 years. Have you seen that? And if so, have you seen the SBA deny forgiveness?
No, we haven't seen any denials for forgiveness. I haven't seen anybody request additional information. I've seen no denials for forgiveness. Knock on wood.
Yeah, same thing. I think that, though, you need to keep all that information. We've been saying that from the beginning. You just never know. And the company that had that request by the SBA, I'm guessing that something triggered that. So there was an anomaly, or it could be random. I mean, I haven't seen official reports of the randomness of the checking, but I think that is part of the process, the required process. by the IRS is that, you know, having this threat that, okay, you need to comply because you never know when you're going to be caught randomly. It's kind of like, you know, we used to go through metal detectors at the airport, and you hear that beep, and you know you're not wearing anything metal, but you're the random person the machine selected in order to get everything in your briefcase swabbed with a piece of whatever it is they do to put it in the machine while you're running late to catch your plane. Just saying hypothetically.
Not that that's happened.
No.
Yeah. uh, Next question is, our payroll company calculates FTEs by 1/10. 20 full-time hourly employees working 36 hours per week reduces our FTE by 2 employees for the covered period. How do I get around this?
Well, you know, a couple things. First off, it you know, if you had anybody that was working below, you know, working part-time, so below half-time, you can count them as a half. That's just statement number one. Statement number two is, for the FTE calculation, you know, I don't know enough about what the payroll companies are doing behind the scenes. The correct answer is that as long as your method of they said to use 40 hours, but as long as your method of calculation is consistent, meaning that same method for my reference period is the same method as I've got over here, then unless you really did have a headcount reduction, it shouldn't matter for this purpose. In other words, like if you were, you know, if your measurement period, you're going like crazy and, you know, you use 36 hours was a full-time person, but you have people working 50 hours, there's still only one. They're not like 1.5.
All right. The next question. Oh my goodness. Does Gary have an opinion about Yamaha jet boats versus props? Well, let me tell you, I'm a drummer and I had a killer Yamaha set. So I was partial to Yamaha drums, but Yamaha jet boats never had one. We had a Chris Craft direct drive inboard V hull ski boat. But man, I can't speak to that. Adam is really the maritime guy. So Adam, do you have a preference on Yamaha jet boats versus props?
If you have children, I would take a strong look at a jet boat because you don't have to worry about them hitting a prop or otherwise getting run over and killed by a prop, which actually, you know, had a acquaintance that the child wasn't killed, but they bought the jet boat after the kid fell out of the boat, and then by the grace of God did not hit the prop on the way through. So, you know, that's the upside. The downside is you can't wake surf behind them. But then again, Gary can't wake surf anyway. Ha! Sure. Wait a second. This one's for you, Jack. Charlie, don't surf.
I'm still surfing, but I am not doing anything behind a boat anymore, which is really sad for me because I love skiing and barefooting. But anyway, let's see. Oh, I do like that idea, Chris. Can we get a BGW PPP discussion on the lake this spring on boats? Well, we did a planning session on a pontoon boat. Adam and I did, and we kind of did a straw man for what will be the vault when it's completely released, probably sometime next month. I'm assuming, or pretty close to it. So it was quite productive, actually. So I highly recommend it. Great idea, Chris. So next question is, for calculating FTE, may we choose any look back period, and how long is that look back period?
It's not any, I mean, it's specifically, this is off the top of my head. I'm going to get the dates probably wrong, but it's specific reference points. It's any rolling 12-week period. You know, there's a seasonal number that like starts in April, goes through June. or you got January through February 15th or 29th, I think. So it's 3 specific. You have one of a few options. You can't just willy-nilly say, I'm going to pick a week here, pick a week there, pick a week everywhere. But you want to pick your, if you think you're going to struggle on filling out an easy form versus not, you really should be looking at each reference point to try to get into filling out the easy form based on the reference point.
Yeah, and I would say as a supplement to that, do alternative calculations, get out your Excel spreadsheets and go through and, look at different periods to see what is the most advantageous to you, and not make any assumptions that one is or is not.
All right, good. Oh, you guys did a great job.
Yeah. But as I said to the client that called me with the same question, Jack could be perfectly willing to drive you to jail when you got it wrong. I'm just kidding. That would not happen. Jack certainly would not give you a ride. I'm just kidding.
I think that Shumaker has these Uber gift cards to drive people to jail. I don't know. And trivia questions, right?
I have some actually funny, relatedly, sort of serious client who has now 3 boys in college. Not that the boys were problematic, but just in case, he asked me when the first son was going to college for a good criminal defense attorney and one that would hold money in escrow for the just in case, and would be willing to give up his personal cell phone number. I'm like, okay, we don't do criminal stuff at my shop, but so I found him somebody that would do that. And so, yes, it does happen sometimes.
Wow. That's a new one. I hadn't heard that one before. Fortunately, we didn't have to deal with that. Next question. Any reliefs, PPP, ERTC, or others for companies with over 300 employees and their headquarters are in Europe?
I think you're still stuck on that one. I'd have to double check on the FMLA, because I think your problem is going to be the head count on the ERTC, and that's also going to be your problem with PPP funding. But I believe that where you're domiciled didn't matter for FMLA and the FFCRA tax credit. So I would absolutely be looking at that one.
Good question. And we've had a bunch of good questions. I think just shy of 20 questions already, and you guys have knocked them out in 43 minutes with a little bit of preamble, a little bit of fun.
So before everybody goes, I used a word that I normally don't use. And if you can identify what that word is, what movie it came from, and who spoke it, I will give you a Starbucks gift card. So whoever gets to that first, I will do that.
I'm going to mouth it. And that was the right answer, Jack.
And while you're contemplating that, and maybe actually, well, it's not published. I don't know if you can even rewind the live recording until it's actually published, but something relatedly, which I thought was interesting, I found in an article that was published a couple of days ago. And this is the statement. It appears that some lenders are requiring PPP borrowers to apply for forgiveness on their first draw before they file to seek a second draw. So in other words, seek forgiveness on the first one before you even apply for the second one. And the comment is, this is not a requirement of the SBA. And so if you're facing that, then you should go talk to your lender. But they did say that the SBA does require that the first draw PPP loan forgiveness application be submitted or simultaneously with, submitted before or simultaneously with forgiveness application for the second draw PPP loan. So you can't seek forgiveness for number 2 unless you have already sought forgiveness or seeking forgiveness for number one at the same time. So it's a measurement of have you submitted forgiveness, not have you submitted forgiveness to apply for number two, if that makes sense.
This is pretty funny. So we got a, you saw it, didn't you?
Yes, I just saw that.
Chris, you are too funny today, man. And I'll bet you're the ski boat guy too. So if Jack leans back further and falls out of his window, will he land on the big cold coin down in the plaza? Yes, if he has enough inertia going back, because that is the right corner, Chris.
Yes.
Oh man.
Although if the guy that was down there saying Jesus saves, I think he actually moved to DC, but I mean,
No, he goes back and forth. His name's Sam.
Sam, yes. Sam I am. I don't know why I can't, but I call him everywhere, man, actually.
Sam
But,
Bethia.
he yes, so outside my window. And actually it got to a point when he, I think, originally moved away or went to, I think, to DC for a while.
Yeah.
It was weird because became part of the white noise, and the fact that it wasn't there took some getting used to, that he wasn't there anymore. So I haven't heard him in a while, but yeah, it's I mean, you could hear his voice booming through the windows, facing that direction.
I used to work at what was it, 224 West Trade, I think, the Carillon building. And I mean, that's 2 blocks, I guess, from Trade and Tryon, and we'd hear him, and he doesn't need a megaphone, man. He is a great guy. I got to know him. So anyway, Chris, thank you so much for the encouragement. And he said, yeah, that's Sam, good guy. By the way, you guys are awesome. We appreciate you. Thank you. It's really awesome to have great people logging onto this thing, bringing us great questions. I hope we're providing value. I trust that we are. If we weren't, no, we wouldn't keep having, 40 or more people on a weekly basis jump on here when there's not a whole lot of new stuff yet. We still are in the middle of tax season. March 15th is coming up. April 15th is still coming up. So, think about your questions regarding that kind of stuff too, if you want to get into that next week as well. So any other questions before we sign off today? Make sure you get out and enjoy that sun, because it's supposed to be raining, I think, tomorrow, but man, it is beautiful out there. Spring is coming. I'm excited. That's why I put on a bright orange shirt. This is the brightest shirt I could find. I'm going to celebrate. And Adam has some swag on there. I think we need to do a quick shout out.
Yeah. Ovation Wireless, thank you for loaning me the shirt today.
That's so awesome. I think, didn't you say that they were in one of our first 10 clients?
Yeah, their first 10 clients back in 2007.
That is so awesome. Thank you, Ovation. It's great.
Are we placing orders for swag? Because I would like the quarter half zips that are the Under Armour ones, and I'd like to go get some, but they're like $60 a piece. Sometimes they go on sale, like at Kohl's, and I'm waiting for that to happen. But if you have some swag that is the Under Armour long sleeve kind of running shirt, but keeps you warm in the springtime because it's not too warm, but it's not too thin, I'm your man.
See,
I will be your walking billboard.
That is the difference between an attorney and a CPA. We don't put those kind of stipulations. We're just grateful if we get anything. And so, I think that the Gupton land clearing hats that we got, I don't know that they were Under Armour, but we were sure grateful for them. So, and same way with the Clean Juice, I don't know that they were Under Armour, but they were really nice. So.
Okay, I'll accept Nike too. So I'm not prejudiced against one or the other.
Keep waiting. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Anything else? Thank you.
We're good.
All right. We're going to put this up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on today for anybody that came on late, but a lot of people were on here early so that's awesome. Thank you again. If you do have questions in the meantime, hit me up. gfry@trustbgw.com or FAQ@trustbgw.com. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Get out and enjoy some sun. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.